They committed a pretty major crime, and the fact that they're going to be put up for a terrorist crime is very serious. I don't think that we should really be kind of sitting back on it. But I think also looking at what happened in the past after 9/11, post 9/11, I think the response to it was a little bit different. I think that what Bush did wasn't the best. I feel as if he kind of felt as if he had a one-track mind of war only rather than having a peace. But I think he also had to deal with an angry America. And what I mean by that is an America who felt that they were violated in some sense, that these people who came from other countries can just come into our country and destroy our life. I feel like that he wanted to make it, in some sense, in response to what he did with the Iraq War. I feel as if that's the reason why he did it, because he wanted to make, in some sense, have these people have some sort of security. That's really the only reason how I can think of Bush actually deciding to go into war with, I mean, not even the country that had the majority of the terrorists coming from, which was Saudi Arabia. We actually went straight to Iraq and Afghanistan.
And what I would say is, like, I think the interesting thing that you put forward, I think a few minutes ago, was like you would have voted for the Iraq War based on the information you were given, and obviously a lot of the information from both the Bush administration and major legacy media outlets such as New York Times, MSNBC, like outlets that we normally would think are liberal, have generals being paid by defense contractors to come in and tell lies about the Iraq War and some of the stuff that we're getting into and some of the response. So what do you think? How do you think those people should be kind of dealt with and kind of punished in a way for getting us into this situation, knowing, I'm talking about people like Dick Cheney and people in the national security apparatus surrounding the Bush administration, like what should be done about the fact that we got into this war and our response to 9/11 was not, it was completely, it was wrong. It was not put to the right people. It was not it wasn't concentrated about who actually did the crime. And meanwhile, the people who did 9/11 are literally we're helping them to bomb kids in Yemen. Like, and we're working with them and we have great relationships with them today. Our leaders are chummy with their leaders, and like those are the people who did 9/11. With the people who didn't, we just really bombed for no reason. Like that was all done willingly by the George W. Bush administration. Like, how do you think that would be? Like, how do you think America should have dealt with some of those people in the aftermath of it? Or do you think they dealt with them properly?
I don't think they dealt with Dick Cheney and the Bush administration very properly. I mean, I think they should have gone through Congress, to be honest with you, a little bit more. I mean, they did go through Congress, obviously, for the war. I do recognize that. But in a sense, I think they should have really made a case a bit stronger. I mean, the case was decent. I mean, it wasn't horrible. I mean, I don't think that it was a very great case. But if you want to ask me, if I had to do a scale of 1 to 10, I would probably give it a 6. And my scaling is pretty harsh. These people would have to be dropping down to their knees, begging, showing us enough information. And what I mean by enough information that these are actually the right people to be going to war with. I mean, I don't think war should always be an answer, to be honest, but certain people do need to understand that what they did was wrong. And I think more of an approach maybe to sanctions possibly would have been better. I'm not downplaying the thousands of veterans who are fighting and who have fought for this country in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think they're in service every day. I'm not one of those people who are like, let's get rid of the military whatsoever. I think the military is a very important thing to have, but I think that we could have had a better strategy plan that would have affected more. I mean, the reason why war doesn't always affect places is because of how the response is, and also you look at what the outcomes are. I mean, we didn't even go and attack the right place in the first place. I mean, yeah, we wanted to do Iraq and Afghanistan. I understand that. But I mean, Saudi Arabia was where the majority of these terrorists are coming from. And I think that if we did it a sanction-based system instead rather than war, I think that probably would have been a better idea, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely interesting to go and watch Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 9/11 about this, because it really shows you just the absolutely mind-blowing blunders that were made by the Bush administration and other people in the wake of this 9/11 really tragedy that, and even before that, when George Bush told someone who was advising him about the issue to quote-unquote go home. And yeah, I do want to talk about today. Like, what do you think today, like 18 years later, what do you think the event of 9/11, like what marks do you think that event has on us today as an American people?
I think it has a graving mark. You know, for me personally, I wouldn't be here talking to you if my mom took a job on the 87th floor of the second tower. Her boss, Jeff Weiner, had actually died in that terrorist attack. So I wouldn't even be talking to you right now if she took that job over at some consulting firm. I'll get the name for you guys in a second here. But, you know, it also hits hard for many because when you look at it now, I mean, people recognize the date. I mean, it really isn't a hard date to remember. I also think that it really does have a long-lasting effect for many people. People who weren't affected, I think, you know, a lot of people have, you know, maybe it may sound extreme for some people, but it does have an extreme effect for people who have saw the act, because PTSD, shockingly, actually is pretty big among people who actually saw the act of 9/11. And
we
a lot
talked
of
about
people,
that on actually in yesterday's episode.
yeah, I mean, it's very alarming as well what happened, because a lot of people really had such a big time in their life that they had to go through this, because, you know, it made people feel insecure about even going to work. I mean, because I've looked at stories of people being late to work, and that saved their life. I mean, I've looked at stories as well where people were going for a job interview in the World Trade Center, and they woke up past their alarm. And when they turned on the TV, they saw that the first tower had got struck.
My dad actually that day was supposed to have a meeting in one of the World Trade Centers at 1 p.m. And if that was like at 8 or 9 p.m. or 9 a.m., like he could have very easily passed away. I could not, maybe even if the meeting was just moved up a little bit more, my dad could just be completely gone, which is like, it's such a, especially for those of us here in the local area, and of course those who had people in family that worked at the Pentagon, people who had family that worked on, who were on Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania. It's definitely going to be a big hole and thing that we're always going to have to remember, just the human toll. But I mean, I would say that like it has given our government kind of an excuse to do some really bad things that have really kind of poisoned our minds as a society, especially in the way that we view people who may happen to be of different religions. And I think it's really been a tragedy in so many different ways. The fact this happened, and the results that not just the fact that the planes flew into the towers, but all kind of the results after that. I think it's definitely worth remembering and never forgetting on this anniversary of 9/11. All right, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, James, for your discussion. And before we go, I'd like to give you the opportunity if there's anything else that you want to add to our discussion, or maybe anything else you want to say to the Wake Up viewer or listeners.
Oh no, it's definitely a great interview, I would say. Very meaningful. You know, I think that we really have to always remember this day, because a lot of people definitely lost their lives. A lot of people who definitely didn't deserve to have their lives lost. And I think that having a conversation about definitely was really the best way to go about it. And I want to thank you for having me on the show today, because this is very meaningful and I value it a lot.
All right. Thank you so much, James Stanley, of course, of the JSPN, Spreaker.com/JSPN. That's where you can find all of his stuff. His show, Political Talk, comes back this Thursday, I believe. Is that correct, James?
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. We will see you for our Friday episode. This is The Wake Up.